You're not going to remember the classes. You're not going to remember the things that your teachers told you. You're not going to remember much of this at all. I have no expectations that you're going to remember the things that I say in class. But I'm hopeful that whatever you do glean from this, whatever does stick, that you build on it for something else. I mean, well, I'll tell you this. When I was in school, okay, I remember my teachers' names, but I don't remember anything that they said. Nothing. I don't remember anything they said, except I had a science teacher one time, a science teacher, who was looking at something that I had drawn, and he said, "You did the wrong expression on that face." My science teacher. I was like, okay, okay. But as far as what any of them taught me in class, I don't know. I don't know anything they said. I don't remember anything they said. I had an English teacher who I know I learned from her. But one thing I do remember that if we asked her how to spell something, she would say, "Go look it up. Go look it up. There's a dictionary over there. Go look it up." And that's all that I remember. So I have no expectation. You'll probably remember my name, but I have no expectation that you'll remember anything that I've actually said in class. But I'm hopeful that you will be able to build on whatever it is that you glean from this. So, how was last Thursday? Did you get an hour off? Did you get to stay home for an extra hour?
No.
No?
I did get to stay home, but got an extra hour to do nothing. Pretty much.
Did you get to sit in the gym and just talk?
Yeah. It's school every 30 minutes. I got to sleep in.
You got to sleep in. You might be the only one. I got to sleep in. You did, yeah. You weren't coming until later. All right, we're going to get started. Take the top one and pass the whole stack.
She has to be so specific with you. Oh, yeah, you did it. Oh.
Okay, why don't you just leave them back there, and when people come in, Anna, you're in charge of making sure somebody gets papers. Okay. I'm going to talk this week about modification, about how you modify. What's a modifier? Anybody know what a modifier is? What is a part of speech that modifies?
Adjective.
Adjective. What's the other one that modifies?
Adverb.
Adverb. We're not going to talk about adverbs. Well, mostly adjectives right now. But, okay, we'll just get to that when we get to it. All right, your first paragraph right there at the top. This is from an essay. I'm just taking part of just a paragraph out of an essay here. And this is written by a neurologist named Oliver Sacks. And he's written about how some people have perfect pitch, like they can hear. Y'all know what perfect pitch is? Okay, some people hear everything in a certain pitch. So this essay is called Papa Blows His Nose in G. So there's somebody's hearing a certain pitch to all kinds of different things. So at 5, he was able to remark, "Only think, Papa blows his nose in G." He would say that it thundered in G, or that the wind was whistling in D, or that the clock struck in B minor. And when the assertion was tested, it would invariably be found correct. For most of us, such an ability to recognize an exact pitch seems uncanny, almost like another sense, a sense we can never hope to possess, such as infrared or X-ray vision. Okay, that's our first paragraph. We're going to talk about that for a few minutes. What first thing that you need to be able to do is identify the independent clause, identify the part that can stand alone as a sentence. So, where is the part that the first sentence is underlined? He would say that it thundered in G, or that the wind was whistling in D, or that the clock struck in B minor. And I'm not going to read the rest of it, but for that part of the sentence, what can stand alone?
It thundered in G, and then the wind was whistling in D.
No. I'm going to tell you why in just a second. The part that can stand alone is he would say. He would say. Because you have subject, you have a subject pronoun, and then you have a verb. He would say. That's the part that could stand alone. Because if you left it at that, it would be kind of odd because you need something to follow up with what he said. But if you switch it out with a different verb, it's a subject and a verb and it's complete. Okay. If you say he stood, yes, it's very short. Jesus wept. Subject and verb, it's a very short sentence, but it makes sense. Okay. So you're looking at that part. What you've got there is you've got subject plus verb plus what is it that's being said? Okay. He would say something is being verbed in the sentence. What is that? It's a little bit of a trick question. It's the direct object, yes. It's the direct object, but every one of those phrases that starts with that is a relative clause. All right? Relative clause starts with that, which, who, whom, whose. If you have a phrase or a clause starting with these words, you have a relative clause. This is not a clause that can stand alone. Okay? So right here you have, he would say that it thundered in G. It's a relative clause. That it thundered in G. That the clock struck in B minor. Did I miss one? That the wind was whistling in D. All right. All of those are relative clauses and they're acting as direct objects. So he would say that. And whatever the relative clause that starts with that is standing in the place of a direct object. Does that make sense? Somebody make eye contact. Yes, thank you. Okay, so just so you know, that helps me to know whether I need to keep talking about something or move on. And when I'm giving you a video at home, I don't have that. And so you're probably going, come on, stop talking about this. You got to, I know y'all say that kind of thing to yourself. She's talking about this too long. She needs to move on. But I can't see your faces. So when I'm looking at you and you're nodding like this or you're looking at me like this, it helps me know whether I need to, whatever, keep going. Hello. Okay, so when you have a relative clause, and sometimes you're going to have a relative clause where the word that is just left off. It's like an understood pronoun, understood you. Sometimes you give a command and you don't put the word you in front of it. Y'all remember this? Okay, so let's say I give you a sentence that said, she told me she's coming. All right. So if you just have it like this, she told me, that's complete. She is coming. It looks like you're joining two complete thoughts. But what's missing here? That. It's just left off. She told me that she's coming. We just leave the word that out sometimes. But what you've got here is a relative clause. So this couldn't stand alone. She told me that she's coming. It's a relative clause. Does that make sense? Okay. So, yeah, I don't mark that very often in your papers, but it's there. All right. So now let's talk about some of these phrases. Um, let's move on to the next underlined thing. All right. For most of us, the same paragraph. For most of us, such an ability to recognize an exact pitch seems uncanny, almost like another sense, a sense we can never hope to possess, such as infrared or X-ray vision. Right. So first, this is going to be a little bit easier, I think, than the last sentence. Where is the independent clause? Where's the part that can stand alone?
Such an ability to recognize.
Yeah. Such an ability to recognize an exact pitch seems uncanny, right? So you have ability, seems. Ability seems, right? That's the subject and verb. Okay, so what's going on right here is you have for most of us at the beginning. So it's modifying, it's telling you who is in who for whom is it uncanny? Because it's not uncanny for everybody. Some people do have perfect pitch, but for most of us. So that modifies the independent clause. The independent clause, you already named it. Such an ability, da 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 da. All right. Almost like another sense, that is also modifying the independent clause. A sense we can never hope to possess. What's that talking about? It's modifying another sense. What sense? It's another sense, the one we can never hope to possess. All right, and then you've got one more, such as infrared or X-ray vision. It's modifying a sense we could never hope to possess. All right, so you've got several phrases here, and they're just modifiers, and they're modifying different parts of the sentence. All right, look at the next one. I know that I'm throwing a whole lot at you here, and like I said, I'm not expecting you to remember every bit of this, but hopefully as we go along, we're going to build. All right, some modifiers, if they're in the early part of the sentence, they're early modifiers. They're early modifiers. And then some modifiers are going to come in the middle, and you're going to set them off with commas. And sometimes the ones at the beginning need to be set off too. All right, look at this one. this is from the same essay, but this paragraph is marking three differences between groups of people. Okay. For students who had begun musical training between ages 4 and 5, approximately 60% of the Chinese students met the criterion for absolute pitch, perfect pitch, while only 16 of the U.S. monotone language speakers met the criterion. Okay, I'm going to stop right there because first, what is he noting? What are the differences between the groups of people? In that sentence, what are the differences between the groups of people? Chinese and American. Okay, they're Chinese and American, but what difference does that make? Why is that important? The languages are different because Chinese is a tonal language. You can move your mouth the same way and form the same words, but if you're saying it at a different pitch, it means something different. And there are several languages in the world that are tonal. English is not. It's not a tonal language. If you say the word, it means the same thing no matter what pitch your voice is at. Does that make sense? Okay. Chinese, and there are other languages too that are tonal languages. And so that's one of the things that he's noting here, that when a kid is brought up in Chinese, speaking Chinese, they're hearing tones that we don't pay attention to. All right. Okay, so the next thing, first, they're from two different countries, right? Then they're from two different languages. One's tonal and one's not. All right, what's the other thing he's looking at? Okay, go down to the next sentence. For those who have begun musical training at age 6 or 7, the numbers in both groups were correspondingly lower, and I'm not going to give the numbers. Okay, but the next thing he's looking at is what age did the kids start musical training? Okay, so you have a lot to keep up with here in this paragraph. You have what country are they from? What language do they speak? What age did they start their musical training? Right, and he's including all of this in this paragraph. So there's a lot for you to hang on to. But one thing that's helpful is that every time he starts to give you more information, he's repeating some of the same words. Okay, so he keeps you knowing what he's talking about um, by a repetition of the early modifiers. So when he says for students who had begun, for students who had begun, and he repeats it because he wants you to be drawn back to what he's talking about. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. I'm moving on. I'm moving on. Okay. Anybody know what a crescendo is?
It's
Come on. What's a crescendo?
increasing in sound and
It's a musical term. Yeah, it's musical because what's going on is you have you're building in sound. You're starting kind of quiet and then you're building to the loudest point, right? Y'all have heard this before? Maybe. Okay, so I'm moving past those paragraphs. All right, so a lot of times you'll see sentences that are building in phrases. You have one kind of phrase and you have another kind of phrase and you have another kind of phrase before you ever get to the real punchline. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, okay. So I gave you some examples here. And um, the first one only has a couple phrases. And this is from a book I read a couple of years ago. It was The Worst Hard Time. It was about the Dust Bowl. You know what that is? Okay. You know what that is. I saw your head nod. Thanks. All right. So this was just about some really bad outlaw. He did a lot of bad things. And the sentence is, instead of snapping his spine behind the ear, the tightened rope caused Black Jack's head to pop off. Okay. So the main part is the tightened rope caused Black Jack's head to pop off. That's the height of the sentence. The first part, instead of snapping his spine behind the ear, that's just it's a dependent clause that's at the beginning. All right, that can't stand alone. The main part of the sentence, the loudest part of the sentence, is at the end, right? Okay, look down the same sentence in purple. It's further down. If you say it the other way around and you put the independent clause first, you put the loudest part, the most important part first. If you say the tightened rope caused Black Jack's head to pop off instead of snapping his spine behind the ear, it doesn't quite have the same effect. It doesn't quite have the same effect because you said the loudest part first instead of building in a crescendo. This is not as dramatic in this sentence because it's a shorter sentence. But look at the next one. In the last quarter of the game, at the far end of the parking lot, 4 girls stood and as quietly as they could pulled cans of spray paint from their backpacks, moving toward their target. Okay, my voice didn't get louder, but the intensity of the sentence got louder because in your head you're picturing something is about to happen. So you're starting slow and then you get to the more important part. You see what I'm saying? Okay. So look down at the same sentence where you put the important part first. 4 girls stood and pulled cans of spray paint from their backpacks, moving toward their target as quietly as they could in the last quarter of the game at the far end of the parking lot. Do you feel how that kind of fizzles at the end? You put the important part first instead of building to it, and the last one it just fizzles out because you're just adding the modifiers at the end. Y'all see what I'm talking about? Okay. And I don't want to do the last one. I had a third sentence on there, but I'm just going to move from that. Okay. I'm switching gears, y'all. All right. Hopefully this is not gonna fizzle out. All right. Important. Not important. And urgent. All right. Y'all ever seen this before? Four quadrants like this? Yes. This is somebody named Stephen Covey put this together a long time ago, and I may actually send y'all a couple of videos about kind of what he was talking about. He did an experiment, and I'm not going to go into that right now, but this is about how we use our time. So some things are important and urgent. This is anything with a deadline, anything that's a crisis, anything with a deadline, some kind of pressing problem. Okay, some things are important and urgent. Some things are important, but they're not urgent, and this is stuff like planning for your future or making steps now to have a healthy lifestyle. It's important, but it's not something that's urgent. Building relationships, building knowledge for some kind of career or job that you want to be doing. It's important, but it's not, you don't have a deadline for it. It's not urgent. Does that make sense? Okay. Some things are not important, but they are urgent. Like you're going to a book club meeting tonight, because I know all of you are involved in book clubs, and you're going to a book club tonight and you're supposed to bring the muffins. You have to get it done. It's urgent, but it's not important. Like it's not important to your life, but it's urgent. You have to do it. Somebody rings your doorbell. It might not be important. It might be somebody, they're delivering a paper or something like that. They want to do a survey. They're knocking on your door. It's not. I almost said something else, but it's not important. But you do have to take care of it right then. Does that make sense? Not important, but it is urgent. Thank you for that, Jessica. I appreciate it. Okay. The last one is not important and not urgent. This is all the stuff where you turn your brain off. You're just wasting your time. And we end up here because we don't want to do this one and we don't want to do this one. So we end up wasting our time. We end up scrolling on social media or looking out the window or answering emails that don't need to be answered or watching TV. Anything else, doing anything else so that we don't have to do the things really that are important. Does that make sense? So we spend a lot of time here because we should be doing other stuff and we don't want to do it. Yeah? Okay. Now that I've done that, here I go on the next thing. When should you be reading? The answer is whenever you can, responsibly. Because some of you like to read, and for you, I know, Coleman, I know. And there are some things that I don't like to read either. I know, I get it. Some of you would actually spend time reading when you should be doing something else because you like to read. Somebody's pointing fingers back there. So for some of you, your reading would go here because you shouldn't be doing it right then. I hear you being called out back there. And probably some of you up here. Yes. And maybe right there. Yeah. Some of you like to read and probably are doing it. And I don't know, maybe you too, Marianne. I don't know. Yeah, you do. Some of you are spending your time here because you are actually reading, but you shouldn't be doing it right then. You should be doing something else. Okay. So, but some of you should be reading and you don't want to do it because you just don't see the value in it, or okay, that's enough. We're pointing fingers. That's enough. I've pointed all the fingers I need to point. So have you. All right. Okay. So there are two main reasons why people say they don't read. First one, any guesses?
No time.
I don't have time. I don't have time. We have time to do what we want to do, mostly. We prioritize the things that are important to us. So we prioritize what we want to do. Okay. So if you're saying I don't have any time to read, you just haven't prioritized it. You just haven't made it a big deal. So I'm not going to spend any more time on that. We find time for the things that we want to do, and sometimes we find time to read when we shouldn't be reading. We should be doing the laundry or something. Appreciate it, Coleman. It's okay. Pipe down back there. Okay. The other main reason, I just don't feel like it. I don't feel like doing it. All right. So, right. Okay. If you don't feel like it, you're not alone. You're not alone. Reading is hard. It's a discipline. It's a hard thing to do. Um, it can be. It's okay. But there are some things that are so valuable that you need to practice. You need to practice. And I'm looking right at you because you've called yourself out, but you're not the only one. You're not the only one. So Coleman, I'm just as proud of you as I could be. So I'm gonna direct my thought. I'm gonna direct my talk, but it's not directed at you. Okay. Humans typically rise to bare minimum. I am not talking about you. No, I'm not talking about you. Yeah, I'm just as proud of you as I could be, buddy. Humans, because I don't know if y'all have been out in the wide world and observed people, workers. Have you ever seen somebody throw something at the trash and miss it and leave it? What is going on here? Have you ever seen somebody sweep up a pile of dirt and then leave it in the floor? We're just all kinds of finger pointing here. People rise to bare minimum or less. Sometimes they go lower than bare minimum and they just whatever it takes to get by. We're not going to excel. We're just going to bare minimum. Okay. And people do that with reading. People do that with everything. But reading is part of that. So, in order to make yourself a better person, and reading will help you with that. Start small. Come on, y'all. Start small.
But I'm not sitting through 20 pages of backstory just to get to like a mediocre story. If a book's not fast paced, I really can't read it.
Okay.
Too much scrolling.
Yeah. It's no, but it's not. I just don't have the attention. That's just
Okay.
always how I've been. I've just never been able to. It's never been able to hold my attention for long enough to want to read it.
Okay. So a couple of things. One, as I have already said to you, some books are not worth reading. Some books are just not worth reading. Some of them are badly written, and that's why they're not holding your attention. Some things are badly written. On the other hand, we do things all the time that we don't want to do. We have to learn to do things that we don't want to do. And reading can be part of that. Reading might be that for you. Now, maybe some of the things that you're being told to read, maybe they're not written well. Maybe they're just boring.
I'm trying to read Dare right now.
I haven't read that one.
I've heard that it's good, but it's just not really getting to that.
It's boring.
You said it's boring.
I quit. It's
Okay, I'm done.
really boring. Honestly, the movies were better. Just watch the movies. The book's not worth it.
Okay, I haven't read the book and I haven't watched the
Well,
movies.
people say it's better than Star Wars. So I was like, okay, then it's probably worth reading.
I don't know if that could be Star Wars. Star Wars was pretty good.
I don't know. I don't know. You are a reader though, right, Jessica? You're a reader.
Yes.
Okay, so here you have somebody who's a reader telling you it's a dull book. I have no input in that. Have you read it? No? Okay.
I don't have the courage to.
You don't have the courage to.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm done.
It's gonna be
Okay.
unfinished.
I'll
The
probably
series
do
is
this
gonna have to like take up another author to finish it, and I'm not in for that.
Okay. Okay, so first, there are books that are dull. You're hearing somebody else say it who she likes to read. She's telling you it is a dull book. You're correct. It's dull. I have no knowledge of this, but you're going on her estimation here. Some books are hard to read. Either they're badly written or they're just dry. Maybe the material is dry. I don't know about this book that y'all are talking about. But the other thing is, some things are going to be worth pushing through because they're good for you. And as an adult, and y'all are almost there. You're almost there. Don't tell your parents that I'm saying that you're adults and that you can do whatever you want to do, because that's not what I'm saying. But as far as maturing, you're not far from adult age, right? You're gonna have to do things that you don't want to do all through your life. I mean, your parents probably don't want to get up and go to work every day, but your dad does it, and some of your moms do too. Your dad gets up and goes to work. Sometimes your mom gets up and goes to work because it's what she's got to do. She's got to do it. She don't want to do it. Let's see. Y'all are getting me all kinds of thrown off here. All right, start small. Start small, doing the things that you've got to do. You're not going to accomplish a marathon tomorrow, but you might be able to walk around the block. Start with if you're going to finish this book, or if you're going to finish some kind of book, read a page a day. You know, you can read something. You can read one page at a time, even if it's dry. Even if you don't like it, start small, whatever it is. The next thing is make a plan. Make a plan for what you're going to read, and your plan might change, but at least you have a direction. Make a plan for when you can pick up a few minutes here and there and read something. Okay, here's another thought. Have more than one thing going at a time. And you might have heard not to do that. You might have been told not to do that. But what I'm going to say is have more than one book going at a time. Because if you run into a stretch of a book that you're supposed to read, or that you actually think is good for you to read, but you run into a stretch that's just difficult, then you're going to want to put that thing down and just not go back to it. And if you don't have anything else waiting, if you don't have anything else that you're working on, then your reading just stops. Y'all have been through stuff like that, right? Because I know that I have come across books where I'm like, I can't read any more of this. I can't read any more of this. It's just terrible. And so I need to switch to something else, or I'm just not going to read. I'm just going to stop reading. Have more than one thing going at a time. If you find yourself in your room, have a book on your nightstand. If you find yourself in the living room, have a book. If your mom will let you, keep it out in the living room. Have a book on the coffee table or something, so you can have different spots where you're reading different things. No?
I would not try because it would get destroyed.
It will.
Get destroyed. Too much activity.
Too many little siblings.
Yeah. See, I'm in a different spot now. I don't have little kids at home. My little one is not little. All right. I got to move on from that. Transitions. Transition devices. All right. So in that list of standard transition devices, in the middle column, the second one down says in conclusion. Just take your pen and scratch that out. Scratch that out. I do not want you using in conclusion when you get to your conclusion. I know it's your conclusion. Don't say in conclusion. I know you're wrapping it up. What? Are we? Oh, okay. He was waiting on, he didn't bring a pencil. He was waiting on his sister's pencil. I thought he was pointing to her about saying in conclusion, and I was like, nah, no, she knows that lesson already. Okay. And I'm going to let you read through that on your own. The first, there's the list there of the easy ones to go to. But transition devices. Some of you have been in this class before and you already know what I'm going to say about this. When you're transitioning from one paragraph to the next, I'm going to give you a couple of illustrations here. So if you're playing basketball and you have picked up your dribble, you have to keep one foot still, right? Yes. You can move the other one, but the one that has to stay still is your pivot foot. So you can turn, you can stretch from one position to another, but you got to keep that one foot planted. Okay, and so when you're moving from one paragraph to another, you have to keep a pivot foot in that first paragraph and stretch to the next one. There has to be a link there. If you want another illustration, you've all done monkey bars, swinging from one to the next. You have a hand behind you as you're reaching. If you turn loose with that hand, what's going to happen? You're going to land on the ground. You have to keep both hands at play. All right. If you got hold of this back one, you have to keep a hold of it until you get to the next rung. Because if you don't, you have lost the monkey bars. All right. This is transition. It's transition from one paragraph to the next. That's what makes the writing feel smooth. It's what connects the paragraphs together, and your essay is going to feel like it goes together if you transition well. All right. The easiest way to do that is to use the same word at the end of one paragraph and then start the next paragraph with that word. That's easy. Or end one paragraph with a word and then use the same word in the first sentence. That's an easy transition because in your mind, you're still hearing that last word as you get to the next sentence. Yes? Okay. All right, so I have some examples here for you. Another way to do that, I don't know that I need to go all the way through this. I don't know that I need to go all the way through this. But a word that you're using in one paragraph, if you're using it again or using the same phrase very soon, very early in the next paragraph, it's an immediate connection. Your ear remembers it. Your ear remembers hearing that word before. But you can also connect an idea. You can also connect an idea. So even if you're not using the same word, let's see. All right, the last one I gave you, it's green down there. It's talking about Mark Twain, and then it says, such a view of Mark Twain. Such a view of Mark Twain would probably have been a source of high amusement to the author himself. It's talking about Mark Twain being kind of a grandfatherly figure, and then the next paragraph starts with such a view. Well, such a view is it's not repeated. Like that has not been used before. But the view that we're talking about is him as a grandfather. So the idea is connected because what you've been talking about is the view of him, even though those words weren't used. It's an idea connection. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. So when you're connecting one paragraph to the next, there has to be some kind of link. There has to be some kind of link, whether it's a direct word repetition or if you're linking to an idea that you just used in the last paragraph, and then you're somehow using that again, or you're referencing it. It's a connection from one paragraph to the next, and that makes your writing feel smooth. Okay? All right, the next thing, I gave you a student essay. It was not written by one of y'all, but I'm not going to tell you who wrote it. This is not a bad essay. It's a good essay. I thought it was well written. All right? It's a good essay. Even in good essays, there are things that could be tweaked, right? So, notice, where's the hook? It's a question. Yes, it's a question. If you're starting with a question, you're getting the reader's attention. I'm not telling you to start with a question every time. There are lots of different ways that you can give a hook, but you're just trying to get the attention. And if you ask a question, the reader wants to be able to answer the question, right? If somebody asks you something, Jana, what do you want to do?
I don't know. It depends.
Well, you gave me an answer then. So you want to answer. I asked you a question and you answered me. Thank you. I appreciate it. I knew we were going to be friends. You see, it's just easy. Okay, so the last sentence of the first paragraph is where I want you to put your thesis statement. There are other kinds of writing in which the thesis statement can go first, or it can be buried a little bit later in one of the next paragraphs. But for what we're doing right now, because I want to make sure that you're getting the lesson, that I want to make sure that you actually are putting a thesis statement in your essay. What I want you to do is put your thesis statement at the end of your introduction, okay? So looking at this one, where is the thesis statement? What is the thesis statement?
Is it a feeling, a state of being, a fleeting moment in time, or maybe something for beyond what you may think?
Yes. So this student used another question as a thesis statement. That's not what I want you to do, okay? Don't, if you have a thesis statement, if you have something that you're trying to say, if you're making a statement, don't put it in question form. Because this is a question, but I know this student knows what he's about to talk about, what she's about to say. This student already knows what the essay is going to be about. This student already has an opinion, but don't give it to me in a question form. Tell me what you want to say. I already know that you have an opinion about it. Just say what you're going to say and then go into why you believe that. Okay. The first, I'm not going to talk about topic sentences, but there's nothing wrong with anything that student did with topic sentences. Look for the transition. So from the second paragraph, look in the last sentence of the second paragraph. The last sentence of the second paragraph, and then the third paragraph, see the first sentence. Where is the transition? What is the student using to transition?
The hormone used twice.
Yes. So in that, at the end of the second paragraph, you have the phrase there, these certain hormones. You see it? These certain hormones. And then in the next sentence, there is as the reward hormone. Okay, so that it's a repetition of the word hormone. There is a link there between one paragraph and the next because that is reused. And again, okay, so in that third paragraph, our brains are easily deceived into thinking about instant gratification. And instant gratification is what I want you to notice right there. And then at the end of that third paragraph, it says, but what are you left with after that? Nothing. Okay, so the idea is instant gratification and nothing being left. The next sentence, the first sentence of the fourth paragraph, you will not and cannot find happiness in instant gratification. That student is using that first sentence to link back to what was just said in the last paragraph. You see it? Yes? Okay. The transitions are good here. This student did a good job with transitions. So there are several ways to do that, and I'm not going to keep going with that. I gave you an essay that I wrote. I'm not going to go over that. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about sounding natural, sounding like yourself, kind of finding your own writing voice. And the more I read your stuff this year, some of you I have read for a long time, 5 years, 6 years, something like that. Yeah, it's been a long time. And then some of you I haven't read for as long, but as you write, I'm hearing your voice, your writing voice coming out. And when I read your stuff, I can actually hear your actual voice. I can hear you in my head because I'm so familiar with your writing. Okay, so writing naturally. Do not try to use language that you just would never use. Don't try to say something in a way that you just would never say it because it comes off as fake. So, just by the way, if you're letting Grammarly or something like that offer you word changes, if it's taking your phrases and changing your wording, Grammarly uses AI to change the word, to change the phrase. So if you're clicking on that and taking the suggestions, you're gonna sound like a robot because that's what AI is. It's just robotic writing. There's no personality to it. So if Grammarly or whatever program you're using is telling you you misspelled this word or you need a comma here or something grammatical like that, you just whatever, fix it. But if it's telling you to change your wording, just be careful about that because sometimes it's actually telling you something that's inaccurate. Like it tells Anna to change her wording sometimes, and it's wanting her to say something that she really didn't mean at all. Just be careful. Be careful with that. don't let it don't let it change don't let it change your wording to something that you would never say. It needs to sound like you. Um, okay. Sometimes we compare our writing with somebody else's writing and we say, well, they are a top tier writer and I am here somewhere. We compare ourselves like it's more like a hierarchy or tiers that we think about this level of writing, this level of writing, this level of really nobody has been in your moment in time through looking through your eyes, feeling the things that you feel, seeing the things that you see, thinking the things that you think. What you write is going to be unique. Nobody else was created for your moment in time except for you. You are the only one who has ever been in your position in this moment in time. What you write is going to be unique to you, and nobody else can say it like you can. And so instead of thinking of these tiers of writing or this hierarchy of who's important or who's not, think of your position as more of a like a territory of who you can reach, who you can influence, who has reached you and who has influenced you. You are in a position that nobody before you has been in. Nobody has lived in your time, in your place, seen things through your eyes right now. Don't compare yourself to somebody else. Write your thoughts, write your words, write your opinions, and don't throw off on yourself because you're not somebody else. Okay. I don't know who that might be. Okay. I think I might have to move that to later. Okay. So um, one thing that I've noticed is that conversationally, we tell stories that happened, but we use present tense verbs, and we do it in conversation. And I've said this to a lot of you, so don't feel like I'm picking on you if I've said it to you, because I've said it to a lot of people. We will tell a story that happened years ago and say something like, and this guy comes up to me, and so we're using present tense verbs instead of telling it with, okay, come here, Kristen. Stand up. Let me show you. Just follow along, okay? Just follow along. So we're gonna do a play-by-play here. And I'm gonna say, Kristen walks right up to me, and keep your back to the camera because I don't want your face public. Kristen walks right up to me and she snatches the marker out of my hand and she puts her hands on her hips and just stares me down like she's 7 feet tall or something. Makes a big X on my board. Over your stuff? Yeah. Makes a big X on my board. Slams the marker lid back on. Puts the marker in my hand and stares me down and just walks straight backwards to her chair. Okay, there's my story, and that was the play-by-play, right? I'm using present tense verbs because she's doing it now. So now that it's already happened, what I'm going to say is, I'm going to use past tense verbs. I'm going to say, Kristen walked right up here to me and she stared me right in the face. She snatched the marker out of my hand. She made a big X on my board. And then she was saucy to me and backed straight up, just strutting as she went, and got right back to her seat. All of those verbs were past tense verbs, right? Because I'm telling something that already happened. But what we do a lot of times is we still keep it in the present tense in conversation. But when you're telling something that already happened and you're writing it down, use the past tense verbs, if it's something that already happened. So what we're about to do, what we've been doing is essays, but some of that has been you're telling stories. You're about to do an expository essay, which means you're going to pick a topic and you're just telling me your opinion. You're just telling me what. Now, what I don't want you to say is I think or I believe or it is my opinion that. I don't need that. It's your opinion. I already know you think it. I already know you believe it. Don't tell me that it's my opinion that there shouldn't be nuts in muffins. It's my opinion. And I don't have to say it's my opinion. I just need to say there shouldn't ever be nuts in muffins. Or you shouldn't put pumpkin spice in your guacamole. I can I can say you shouldn't do that without saying I believe that you shouldn't do it. I don't need to say that. If I say it doesn't need to be there, you know that's what I think. Okay? You're probably going to need present tense verbs from here on out because you're not talking about something. Now, if you're writing about something in history, you can use past tense verbs. But it's a difference when you're telling a story, when you're telling something that's already happened. Present tense is much harder to do. If you're telling something that already happened, use past tense verbs. But in the essays that we're writing now, present tense is probably what you need to go to. Okay, let me see. I don't have time for some of this. All right, your reading assignment. This will not be a prose to poem response this week. It will not be because the reading assignment is something that you're gonna have to think about. It's interesting, but you're gonna have to think through it. Okay, it's some philosophy that I read over the summer. So
I can't believe it. Taking out my question.
you can still write a poem if you want to.
Yeah, I have to do all the extra stuff, and that takes up
Well,
all the space.
answer
Can I
the
do a poem?
questions and then you can write a poem about it. You can handle it.
Answer the questions in poem form. But the poem is so easy to answer.
Answer the questions in a poem form. Answer the questions in a poem. There you go. Thank you, Haley. Any questions? Any questions? No. Okay, be gone with you. Out, out, out. Middle school's coming in.
We have